So hello, everybody. I'm Zoe from Healthwatch Bucks, and a really warm welcome to everyone who's joining us today to hear about the Buckinghamshire Medical Examiners Service. We're really pleased to welcome Dr. Helen Pegrum, the lead medical examiner, and Sandra Reeves, the senior medical officer, to hear about the service and to answer any questions that you have. We've got an hour for today's webinar. We'll start with a short presentation from Helen and Sandra, and then we'll go on to questions. We're due to finish at 1:30. The meeting is being recorded. You will see that at the top of your screen. So if you, we will put this recording on our website. So if you don't want to be shown at a later date, please turn your cameras off. As I mentioned, if you could keep your microphones off when you're not talking, that really helps with the sound quality. And so following the presentation, we will have the opportunity to ask questions. Please do this in the chat or by raising your hand, and we'll do our best to keep on top of those. But thank you, everybody, for coming, and I will hand over to Helen and Sandra for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I'm just going to share my screen now. You confirm you can see that?
Yes, Helen.
Brilliant, thank you. So thank you very much for asking us to come and talk about the death certificate reforms and the medical examiner service, because there's been a change in the law that happened on Monday, and we just really wanted to take this opportunity to update you and give you opportunity to ask us any questions. So the background to why all this is happening. As many of you may well remember that when Jeremy Hunt was Secretary of State for Health, he brought in an initiative around learning from death in 2016. And that was on the background of a few reports into the health service where maybe some of that care had been questioned and maybe there was some improvements that could be made. So as part of his initiative, he established medical examiner services with the aim that they would initially review all hospital deaths. And the idea of that was that we could learn from the care that we provided and see if there were anything that we could do better. In addition, we would also seek the views of the bereaved, so the next of kin, and provide them with additional support. So that was the kind of background aim of the whole service. And in Buckinghamshire, we began in 2017. We began in December, not a great time of year to begin, as you'll be aware that there's a larger increase in the number of deaths in the winter months. But we've kind of had a service that's running and very well established in the hospital since then. We started reviewing community deaths in 2021. And the law has now changed and the system is statutory from last Monday, which means that every death has to be reviewed either by a medical examiner or referred to the coroner. And we'll go on and explain this in more details. So what does our service do? What do we do as medical examiners and medical examiner officers? So we speak to the doctor, and that I say speak in inverted commas, that may be an email conversation or a telephone conversation, but we discuss with the doctor who's writing the cause of death certificate what they want to write, support them if they need support in referring to a coroner. They may be absolutely fine and they can crack on and do that, and answer any queries or provide any information if required. So that's the first bit, speaking to the doctor, writing the cause of death certificate. The next thing we do is we scrutinise the notes, and we're doing that to look for areas of learning and areas of care that potentially might be improved. As medical examiners, we are all senior doctors. So I'm a consultant, and all of the medical examiners are either consultants, experienced GPs, or experienced specialty doctors. And the aim of our scrutiny is that we have some experience and hopefully we can identify areas for learning. But it is, when we do that, it is one senior doctor's opinion. We then also speak to the next of kin to explain what's written on the death certificate, answer any questions they might have. Often death certificates have quite a lot of medical language on them, which maybe isn't always clear, and we can explain things to the families, and also we ask for feedback regarding their loved one's care, particularly in that last kind of few months of life. So we undertake that process for every death that doesn't need referring to a coroner. And that, as I said, the changes in the law are that that has to happen. And if a cause of death certificate is sent to the registrar's service without us reviewing it or without a coroner having been involved, then they will not register it and it will then have to go back. And that obviously causes a delays for families. So we want to make sure that people are fully aware of it and that information is out there for everyone to know. There are actually new medical cause of death certificates that have been provided to all GP practices and to all healthcare settings so that we have a space for our signature as medical examiners on there. Those have all been sent out to everybody together with information about how people refer into our services. Another change that has happened in the law is that it used to be that, and this is particularly relevant for community deaths, that a doctor had to have seen a patient within 28 days to enable them to complete the cause of death certificate. That has now changed. And it now can be completed for a doctor who has cared for the patient in life, so at any point in life, and has access to enough clinical information and the clinical notes to be able to complete that paperwork. So, for example, maybe a partner in a GP practice who saw a patient maybe 6 months ago, but has access to the notes and maybe can have updated information to enable them to complete the cause of death certificate. So once a referral has been made, either by the GP or a junior doctor into the service, then we can begin our process. We agree the cause of death with the doctor, and in the community we have access, granted access to the electronic community records to be able to review the notes, and we then also speak to the next of kin. Once we've done those things and are happy to proceed, we will then sign the certificate and send it to the registrar's office. That's emailed to the registrar's office. There is no longer any cremation paperwork, and any information that is required for cremation is now contained within the death certificate that we write. We also have an out of hours medical examiner service on Saturday, Sundays and bank holidays for urgent faith releases. And then hopefully we can proceed with them as quick as possible. And it is in the morning to align with our registrar colleagues, and also when burials may occur in the afternoon. Referrals to our service are made by email or telephone, and the contact details for those are enclosed there. So that's a very, very quick run through of what the service is, and I'm happy, myself and Sandra, to elaborate or answer any questions or elaborate in any particular areas that you wish us to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Do you have a question, Heather? To start
Yes.
off.
Thank you. I was just wondering, for the bereaved person, they don't have to do anything. All this is done automatically. And when it's almost at a close, then you will phone the bereaved person. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So normally in a community setting, it may be the bereaved person that lets the GP know that a patient, their loved one has died, or it may be through a nurse, or it depends on the on the relevant case. So once the GP is aware that a person has died, then they will follow through this process. Family members may choose to just can ask questions of the GP, like have they sent the referral in, if they wish to do so. But we will then pick up and follow through that whole process. And we are aiming for us to do that. Once we receive the referral, we would hopefully be able to turn that round for all deaths, hopefully within 24 hours.
Thank you. Why has the change occurred? Is this since COVID really, and people were concerned that COVID was put on the death certificate when their loved one hadn't passed with COVID?
It's way before COVID. So this has come around for a few reasons. So firstly, as I say, with various things that happened like Gosport and various other, the Francis report, various other issues around deaths, and feeling from the Secretary of State for Health that people weren't learning from the experience of deaths, and particularly speaking to loved ones about their experiences. And so this is a way that we listen to the bereaved and we review all deaths and see if there's any learning and what happens. So in the hospital setting, once we've reviewed a death and we feed that information back into the team. So if it's positive, it's lots of positive things, they get to hear that. If there's any learning that we feel should be looked at in more detail, that's fed back into the department and they look at the case in more detail. Similarly, in primary care, once we've gone through our process, we will feed back the family's comments and feedback our view to the GP practice, and then it will be there up to them to look at it in any more detail. And obviously we are not a complaint system, and so if people want to complain, that is absolutely still open to them and available to them, and we would encourage them to do so.
Thank you for making that clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather, for that question. Dennis?
Yeah, just a couple of it's most probably a nitnoid one. I think you partly answered it, because with this new process, is it as quick as the old straight death certificate? So it doesn't delay, no chance of delays for funerals or anything like that?
So our aim is that it should not delay the process for families, but the reason I was at pains to point out is we can't start our process until we receive the referral in from the GP. So sometimes the process may feel like it takes a few days because maybe there isn't somebody in the practice who can complete that paperwork at that point. But our process we will endeavour absolutely to process things as quickly as possible and not delay things for families.
No, that's fine. And the other one was, it was just a nitnoid thing. Either to be referred by a GP, or in the hospital, you said a junior doctor. Is this? I'm being a bit naughty. Does that mean the senior doctors and the consultants don't have to, or they could do? I mean, you know, by saying. So
yeah, it's just the normal practice is that the junior doctors come and complete the paperwork. However, they are required to speak to their consultants before they come and do so. We do sometimes get consultants in the bereavement office, don't we, Sandra? And at times, yeah. And we are them as well, so as medical examiners, so we always like a good chat with our colleague, and so that will happen sometimes, that we will have consultants come to the office, but normally, because of how things work, it's the junior doctors are on the ward and care for the patients on a day-to-day basis, and it will normally be them who come and complete the death paperwork.
Okay, fine. And one in today's paper, I mean, we're all reviewing how Wes is going to transform the world along with Mr. Starmer, particularly NHS. The disturbing thing was the huge amount of extra deaths in A&E. Is that something you've picked up in Bucks Health, that the pressure on A&E is causing additional deaths that you've taken up?
So I don't think I would say that we've particularly found that there's many more deaths in A&E, but then A&E becomes there are lots of kind of parts of A&E that patients go to, like the acute medical unit and the other bits. And so sometimes patients do die in those parts of kind of what we would call the acute hub. So they may not actually die just in accident and emergency, they may die in other bits. Would that be fair, Sandra?
Sorry.
Yeah, that would be the
I don't think
case.
there's been an increase at all. I was just going to add with the referrals, saying referrals into the service in hospital, we're informed, you know, straight away, because that we're all in house, so we don't have to wait very long to be aware of a death that's occurred within one of the hospital settings.
Well, thanks very much. Some awkward little questions, but good feedback. Thanks.
Thank you, Dennis. Hills?
Yeah, my question was much along the same sort of lines with timescales. I know you said you've got the out of hours at the weekends, but say, for example, ironically just happened, my mother-in-law passed away last night in hospital, and we just found out about this new system. Obviously we handed different paperwork, but it's now Friday, so realistically does nothing happen over the weekends unless there's a particular religious requirement?
That is the case, and that was the case previously. The registrars aren't open routinely. I think they do open Saturday mornings, don't they, Sandra? But most of the deaths would not be processed anyway until, and you won't have the doctors in the hospital necessarily available to complete that paperwork as well. So yeah, there is a gap over the weekend. There always was, so I'm afraid we've not been able to fill that gap. But okay, it's so, exactly
so in a hospital situation, and say for example the doctor filled in the paperwork today, sent it to you, you receive it Monday.
No, so if they filled it today, we would process it today.
Oh, I see. Right, okay. And then it's down to you to contact the relative, is it? Because
so we ring so we ring the relative, we ring the next of kin, so we can only ring one relative, so we will ring the next of kin details that we are given. Then we'll have a conversation with them, and we will explain that we are then sending the death certificate to the registrar, and then they can the next working day book an appointment. Anything you want to add, Sandra?
Yeah, I was just going to say that if it was written, if the doctor was available today to do the paperwork, they would meet with the medical examiner. We have an appointment system, so they meet and discuss with the medical examiner, as Helen said previously, either face to face or via, you know, MS Teams if the doctor was in Wickham Hospital, for example. And we would, as part of that, we would phone the nominated next of kin and inform them what was going to be on the medical certificate of cause of death, so that they could ask any questions or have anything explained, any terminology. And we would email that across to the registrar, but they wouldn't, if it was today, they wouldn't process it their end until Monday.
Because that's actually an improvement from January when my mother passed away, because it seemed to be that everybody thought it was somebody else's responsibility to contact me to let me know that the certificate was now available and that I could make an appointment with a registrar. So that's actually an improvement. If that's something that you're, you know, it definitely comes through you and you definitely contact the next of kin, that's good.
Yeah, so the new legal changes that came in effect on Monday are that we must speak to the nominated next of kin before we can send the medical certificate to the registrar. So say it was today and we weren't able to reach you for whatever reason, we would try again. We wouldn't send it, we'd try again on Monday morning, but we haven't had many problems because most people kindly leave a landline and a mobile, so we're pretty good at getting through to to people, and we do persist to try and reach them before, so that we can get the paperwork sent, you know, in a timely manner.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Hills, and really, really sorry to hear about your mother-in-law.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Anybody who's recently joined, I think who might have missed some of the presentation, want to ask anything? No? Is it going to be a very short webinar? No?
I'm just aware a few people have joined later, but I hope they understand what the service is about.
Anybody who's joined who wants to ask any questions? Do you want to give a quick, I don't know if it's, do you want to do a quick recap? I mean, we will, as I say, put this on our website so people can go and look at it then, and we'll do that over the next week or so. No? Okay, last chance. No, okay. In which case, thank you, Helen and Sandra. That's really helpful to hear about that and the processes that you've got in place. Thank you for coming. And for everybody else, thank you. This is the first webinar we've done for a while, but we will be hosting them more regularly in the future. So if there's anybody or any service that you would like to hear from in particular, then let us know, so that we can take that into account when we're planning future webinars. But do, as I say, so we'll have the copy of the presentation, but also we'll put the webinar on our website for people to go back and watch as you need to. Fiona, is there anything you want to add? I can see you typing. No, yeah. Keep an eye on our website for any future webinars, and send us any feedback on this one. If there's anything you'd like to hear more about, or any suggestions, Fiona has put the our email address in the web chat. But thank you, everybody. Thank you, Helen and Sandra, as well, for coming along and talking. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.